Kia ora whānau and welcome to another episode of Get a Job and Get Healthy with Costas Enterprises. I am your ever-loving host, Alex Costas, and today we're going to do another one of my top 10 books. Because some of the books that I've got are repeating themselves with different authors, I'm just going to change it up and instead of the top 10, effectively it's the top 15 books, because some of these are in a series that I do think everyone should read if you are looking at that particular type of thing, with the entrepreneurial type thing. Now, this does also go in place with the last list that I did as well. There are some extra books on there that you could potentially do again, which I think everyone should be able to read. We won't really mention those because I want you to go back and listen to the last podcast, because I do think there are some extra some good ones, but some of those books that are there will also help you with this entrepreneurial journey. So let's get into it. First and foremost, thank you for listening. I do appreciate all the listens. It is really, really important to me that I keep this up and keep trying to go with you guys. But let's go through all the fun stuff. So first and foremost, if you want to, you can find me on socials. So you're listening to this podcast, you can find it on Spotify. You can also find me on @thekiwidon on both Instagram and on Twitter. You can also find me via my website, www.costasenterprises.business.blog. That's www.costasenterpres .BUNIESS .blog, blog. So that's costasenterprise.business.blog. You can also email me doncostas@gmail.com. That's Don Costas, N for Nike, that is. And so, yeah, feel free to hit me up with any questions or any other recommendations of books that you want me to review or at least tell you about that I've done. And I'm more than happy to help you with those sorts of things as well. So, now that we've got to the fun things, we're going to get into this list. This list is about 15 books this time, but as I said, technically it's 10, but because some of the authors have extra books that I think people should read, there's just some thrown in there as well. As opposed to last time where I sort of had 12 books for 10, this is now, of course, these ones are a little bit different. So, number one. Now, these, again, are not in any particular order, but I do think that the ones where I mention from the same author usually are going to be in order as the way that you should read them. However, if you can get your hands on any of their books, preferably the first in the series, and start from there, it doesn't really matter which ones you read. All of these should help you grow as an entrepreneur, but also give you a bit more of an idea of how to think differently. These are not the way that I read them. I read some of them, I read first and second when I should have read the other ones first, which is why I'm giving you this list now of the ones that you should read first. The first three books are actually all from the same guy called Mike Michalowicz. The first book I read of his was one called Profit First. This is a must for every entrepreneurial, especially if you are just starting out, starting your own small business. It's got some great ideas for how you can, make sure that when you're making money, you're making money for yourself, and that you're also making your profit first and paying yourself your profit first. Very, very great book for that particular reason. And I do feel it is one of those things that people should look at, especially when you are starting a new business. It has definitely helped me with the way that we're doing our business and what it is that we're doing as well. So that's Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. The second book by him is The Pumpkin Plan. Now, the Pumpkin Plan book is more on exactly what it is that I'm trying to talk about, and focuses a lot on when you're creating your business, think more about how you can niche yourself down, make your product better for everyone else, and how you can help yourself. Do apologize for all the background noise as well. So yeah, I do think Pumpkin Plan is one of those books that once you read Profit First and then you read Pumpkin Plan, you can sort of go, right, Pumpkin Plan is you setting up your business, starting up your business. The Profit First is something that you can get into your mindset, more so for the financial aspect of how to start a business, like the sorts of things that you should be looking at doing, and really, really helpful because you don't get taught a lot of that stuff as well. And then finally, the third book in his sort of series that I think everyone should read is called Clockwork. And Clockwork is more about taking your idea from Pumpkin Plan and then sort of redefining it and making it so that, how do you automate your particular business? Because at the end of the day, what we all want from this is to start a business and then to be able to walk away from the business and have it run itself, which is effectively what Clockwork is all about. So those three books, I've counted them, even though I've gone 1, 2, 3, they are kind of one book. Hence why there's 15 books now, because I wanted to do a top 10 list. I was actually doing a top 11 list, and then thought, why not add an extra book, because it was getting close to 15. So yeah, it's the first three books are those books, and I do think that as an entrepreneur, those books are really, really good to get your hands on. If you start with Pumpkin Plan first, or you even start with Clockwork first, that's okay. I would go back and read the other two as well. They are referenced within his earlier books, and they will really, really help you quite a bit. The next two books are actually just the starting of a couple of his books. You guys have heard me talk about Gary Vaynerchuk before, or Gary V. The man is really, really fantastic with entrepreneurs and having an entrepreneurial state of mind, but also explaining what you should look at doing. Like, if you're not sure what to do and how to do things, here's a great way of opening your mind and opening the way that you think. Because once you start thinking like an entrepreneur, you start thinking differently of how can I maximize this? How can I do this? And what can I make from this? And that's kind of what I'm talking about. A lot of these books that I read were ways of me getting out of my comfort zone and thinking a little bit differently, thinking, how can I do this? What is it that I'm doing that's changing these things? So Gary Vee actually has a couple of different books, and I would suggest reading all of them, which sounds a bit weird. I've read about 4, 5 of his books, and there's about one that I'm missing because I can't find it on the Libby app, and another one is a written book that, is a physical book, which is a little bit harder for me to read. I do prefer listening to books. But the first one is Crush It. And that's his sort of first book about talking things. Then he does Crushing It. Now, Crushing It is a follow-on to Crush It, where he talks about people that have taken his principles in the first book and then used them, and he uses real examples. Now, I do strongly suggest get the audiobook, because he does add extra stuff in it and updates the book while he talks about it, which he doesn't do normally, because he actually has that experience to go, look, I've reread this is the same, but this is a bit more in depth of what I was meaning at the time. Another couple of his books that are really, really good, I mean, Crush It and Crushing It are great first steps. Jab, 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 left hook, jab, 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 right hook, is another great entrepreneurial book. He's got a few different ones. His latest one, which came out last year, is a fantastic book about the different principles that you use in business, and how most people think these qualities and these ways in life are actually, they're not actually good. And what I mean by that is, it's things like, using empathy, using kindness. These are simple values that I think everyone should have in their life. And it's not something we see in the business. So it's still one of those really, really cool ways of like thinking. And yeah, I'm counting Crush It and Crushing It for this list, but realistically, you can go through about 4 or 5 of his different books, and each one of them will bring something to the table. If you can read them all as a group, like they don't follow any particular story, they all have different aspects that they match. Like there's another one called Ask Gary V, which that one is a must on the audiobook. And the reason I say that is because he gets asked questions, and the book itself has changed since the time when he did it. In fact, he actually adds extra things in there and really updates the book, which I think is really, really cool. And it is something Gary Vee does, because he recognizes the the medium and as well. And if you're sort of struggling to think how you can sell things or how you can do things through social media, that is exactly what it is that he sort of that's what he got famous on doing, was social media. He was famous on YouTube before YouTube was really big. And so he's created a business from that. And when you start like listening to him and seeing what the kind of things that he does, it's very, very cool and very, very interesting as well. Okay, so book technically number 6 is The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Now, this is one of those books that is fantastic for getting you into the mindset of, once you are working sort of in that respect of working for yourself and becoming an entrepreneur, trying to make it work for you so that you are actually working, 4 hours a week. You can automate things. So it's very similar to Clockwork. I actually read this before I read Clockwork, but Clockwork I found, because I quite like Mike Michalowicz and the way that he talks, I got more from that than I did from Tim Ferriss's book. However, principles are very similar. And as a starter, it's one of those sorts of books that is great because it sort of goes, right, well, I'm in this position now. I want to do this. How do I make this work for me? How do I put in a full-time job without putting in full-time hours? And that is something that I think is very, very cool. And it's definitely one of the ways that I'm starting to change my way of working and my way of thinking as well, which is quite cool. So, yeah, I do strongly suggest checking out Tim's book as well. Now, the next couple of books, there are some in there in regards to, being a millionaire and all that sort of thing. It's in there as sort of like a guide for, hey, this is the way that you want to be. This is the sort of mindset you have to get into. And kind of that's what I'm meaning with all these books is the mindset. Like, what is it that I'm thinking? What is it that you're thinking? How do we sort of come across these ways of thinking, and what can we do to sort of get into it? And the next book is fantastic for that. In fact, it's actually one of the books that it really started making me think like an entrepreneur. It really started making me think, not so much because of its entrepreneurial talk. It doesn't even have the entrepreneurial talk as much as you'd think. It's got more the millionaire thinking. And it's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T.J. Harvey Esker. This is one of those books. It's funny. It feels like an infomercial. It's not an infomercial. I'm going to be honest, this book got me super motivated. Especially, again, the audiobook, because I don't know, it's not that it's filled with positive affirmations or anything like that, but it's really fantastic. It was one of those sort of books that got me thinking, got me going, cool, I can do this. Oh, that's really cool. This is something that I can think about, and, the way that he talks, the way that, he engages with you, makes you feel like you are on the journey with him. You are also in that possibility to actually have and think like a millionaire, actually start learning their secrets, but at the same time, realizing that their secrets aren't that difficult and that we all can achieve it. It's an achievable goal. It's not something that we can be afraid of all the time, which, is the problem that we usually have, is we are afraid of change. We are afraid of the way that we think. And yeah, I thoroughly suggest this is one of those books that is worth a look. The next book is, believe it or not, it's The Art of the Deal by Mr. Donald Trump himself. Now, look, I'm not a Trump supporter. If you yourself are a Trump supporter, I have no qualms with you. That's fine. I think as a president, yeah, I wasn't too happy with the way that he ran things. I just thought, I thought he was more of a clown with some of the things that he was doing. And look, that's my own personality. I listened to this book and I changed my mindset, not so much about him as a president, but my mindset around him. Before that, I only knew him as, you know, the guy that made Trump Tower, and I also knew him as The Apprentice. Like, that was all I really had to go from. And The Art of the Deal is literally what you think it is. It's talking about the art of talking, the art of, negotiating. And as a Kiwi, I'm not the best barterer, I'm not the best negotiator, but I listened to the audiobook. The first half chapter, introduction, is basically him. The rest is not him, but it's his story. And I gotta be honest, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of those ones which was just not an amazing book, but it was there's a reason it's been such a popular book for so many years, for so many reasons. And that is pretty much because of the way that he is, but also, like, he goes through his story. Like, you see what he did, how he shaped so much in the way of things like, he shaped so much in the way that he sold stuff, but also how he went from nothing to everything, then back to nothing, and then back to everything. Like, it's quite surprising, quite cool too. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, I have spoken about this book previously in my podcast. This is one of those books that I believe is a game changer, and everyone should read this. It is something that my father gave me years ago, which I wish I'd read, but never actually did. And for that, I'm an idiot, because had I known that earlier, I would have learnt to change the way I did my money, basically. So yeah, it's one of those ones that I think everyone should read. He has quite a few in his series: Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Retire Young, Retire Rich, The Art of Conspiracy, or something like that. I mean, a lot of them are really, really good, but I do think that Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the best, and everyone should read that as a starter. I would then say read Retire Young, Retire Rich, because that is another one of those books that is just... It helps you get into that mindset of being an entrepreneur. It helps you realize that, money is there to be used, not be wasted. And so many times we do waste our money because we buy stupid shit. Let's be real. So yeah, I think that if you can get your mind around that and making money work for you, you'll see that he is quite the entrepreneurial. And that is something that I think a lot more people need to realise. And he sort of talks to you from both sides of the story as well, which I think is amazing. The next book is The Millionaire Mind by Thomas J. Stanley. Now, he also has The Millionaire Next Door, which these books sort of go hand in hand. I haven't included The Millionaire Next Door, but effectively, if you can read both, that would be great. The reason for that is both of those books sort of deal with the millionaire mindset, and when you get into that sort of mindset, you'll start to realize that the way that you think is completely different to the way that they think. Our perceptions of what we think a millionaire thinks is completely different to what actually happens. Like, while we think they're out there spending money all the time, they're not. Like, they're literally, like, not doing anything like that. They are actually, saving their money. They're doing this. They're investing their money. They're making their money work for them. They're effectively, like, they are making their money work for them, which is kind of what I tried to talk about before in some of my other podcasts that I've talked about. So, yeah, it's one of those ones where once you start to listen to the books, and again, the books do come hand in hand. If you can read The Millionaire Next Door as well, that will help you a lot based on what I'm talking about as well. Because you'll start to go, oh, cool, I understand that now. And it does all flow a lot more than you would think. So, yeah, that's both The Millionaire Next Door and The Millionaire Mind. This is backed up by research. The guy has interviewed like over 1,000 millionaires at the time that he did this. So, yeah, it's quite cool. Going back to sort of the entrepreneurial mindset, we've got the Blue Ocean Strategy book, number 11, Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim. This is about a 6-hour book, and if you can get your mind around it, it is one of those ones where while it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about at the very, very start with the pumpkin plan. If you design your plan to do with with your niche in mind, then you will start to look at all those other things. And yeah, it's one of those really, really cool ideas of, instead of looking at creating a restaurant, what about creating a specific type of restaurant that's not seen by anybody else in your area? That maybe you do something renewable, you do this. So it's about taking the normal things and then just flipping them a little bit so that you become not a part of the blue ocean, but you become part of the red ocean. So when you go into the principles of what it is that the book is talking about, the red ocean is sort of like, finding that, it's like Microsoft versus, Apple, and the way that both of those companies found a specific niche. Like Microsoft sort of stayed away from making computers because Apple were making all the computers, but Microsoft became the software giant because they were like, well, this. And now look at Apple. Apple uses Microsoft products despite them being Apple. So it's one of those weird sort of books where if you can get your mindset around what it is that they're talking about and you can apply it, you can make quite a bit of money based on the things that they're talking about if you can niche it down the right way. It's very, very cool book in that respect. The next two books are kind of go hand in hand, and there's actually 3 or 4 books from this guy, Chris Guillebeau. Basically, his books are The $100 Side Hustle, 100 Side Hustles, and there's also a book called Side Hustle. Again, these are fantastic books for getting you into that mindset of looking at the actual side hustle itself and how you can turn your side hustle into an actual viable business. So yeah, again, very, very cool. And one of those things that I think everyone should sort of look at. So yeah, all 3 books. I'm only counting 2, the first 2 books, not Side Hustle itself, but realistically, you should be looking at all 3 books if you can, because yeah, they're really, really interesting and really, really cool. Yeah, they again, a lot of these books are in regards to mindset and having that idea and going, oh, actually, I want to create this as a business. Well, unless you actually try it, you don't know what will work and what doesn't work. And this is a great way of you going, okay, cool, this works, this doesn't work. I again think this is one of those ones where the more people actually look at it, the better it is. So yeah, Chris Guillebeau, 100 startup $100 startup and 100 side hustles, and also the book Side Hustles as well. Well worth reading and a great idea if you are looking at this sort of thing. The next book is it's considered as sort of a classic, and it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I will let you know right now, it is a very old book. We are talking very old, and to the point where, it's probably about 1940s, 1930s, and yeah, it's one of those books that the principles are pretty much the same and have been the same for the last, 20 odd years, 30 odd years, 40 odd years, 50 odd years. So as you can imagine, it's quite an old book. But it is one of those ones which, if you listen to as many of these sort of entrepreneurial type books that I've been reading and have for the last couple of years, you will find that they a lot of them reference this particular book as well. So it's one of those classic books which I think everyone, if you are serious about this and you are serious about looking at starting up your own business or being an entrepreneur, you do need to read Think and Go Rich by Napoleon Hill. He does have a couple of other books as well, but this is like this is the most famous one. And yeah, the principles, while some of them are a little bit outdated, overall the principle is the same. And yeah, it's a lot of the times when you listen to some of these other books, they'll quote things, and one of them will be quoting things from this book as well. And the final one is kind of the same as the Blue Ocean Strategy, but this book is called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. This is book number 15. The reason why I picked this particular book is it is really, really good at making you think outside the box, thinking more, how do you maximize your way of thinking? How do you think rather than thinking of like, oh, I'm going to open a restaurant? Think about, how do I create this restaurant as a brand? How do I create this as a franchise? How do I think of this as something that could go global as opposed to the other way around, if that makes sense? And as one of those sorts of thinking books, it's something that I think everyone should actually read it. Let's put it this way. You could read this or Blue Ocean Strategy, but if you read both, they'll both work hand in hand together. They'll also make you think a lot more. They'll make you... Yeah, just question if what it is that you're doing, can you do it a different way? Which is kind of the same as all of these books. It's like, rather than thinking like a normal entrepreneur, how can you think like an extra entrepreneur? How can you make everything work for you as opposed to work against you? How can you minimize, the work that you do and all that sort of stuff as well? So yeah, that's what I suggest everyone reads in those 15 books. I'll go through them very quickly again before finish, but basically they are number 1, Profit First, and Pumpkin Plan and Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz, top 3 books. Number 4 and 5 is Crush It and Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V as he's known. Number 6, the 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. Number 7, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, T.J. Harvey Esker. Number 8, The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump. Number 9, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert T. Kiyosaki. Number 10, The Millionaire Mind, or The Millionaire Next Door, Thomas J. Stanley. Number 11, Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim. Number 12, 100 Side Hustles, or The $100 Startup, number 13 by Chris Calabu, or The Side Hustle. And then number 14, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, again, classic book. And number 15, finally, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. You read those books and I guarantee you will start thinking a bit more differently. You will start thinking like an entrepreneur. And ideally, that is what you want. You don't want to be working for someone else for the rest of your life, so why not work for yourself? Why not create something that you can go for? And then the most important thing about all of these books is actually starting to put some of their stuff into plan. If you've got that idea for such a great idea that you want to do, that you want to make into your own, start thinking about little steps that you can do to try to make your way into that. I guarantee you it will help so much. So that will end it for this episode. I do want to thank you for listening. As always, I love you guys and good luck.